Welcome, everybody, to Radicalized Truth Survives, episode 133. I'm Heidi Kuda, and today me, Jim, and Hi-Fi are interviewing our good friend Dietmar Pichler, the Disinfo Resilience Network founder, and he's going to be talking about how Austrian intelligence busted a bunch of Russian spies and how Europe is responding to Putin's aggression. Have a listen. Dietmar Pichler, you are a very good friend from Vienna, Austria. You actually have a bit of good news from Vienna, Austria, which we don't always have. Of course, many of our friends have seen you on RadPod before, doing great work in the disinformation space. But can you tell us about what happened that involved Austrian intelligence in exposing essentially a Russian spy ring with Bulgarians, doing Putin's work? What's going on there?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me. Thank you for introducing my work. It's always a pleasure to meet you in these difficult times. It's good to be not alone and have international allies. And we have to use the word allies, even if it's about the information space, because we are in an information war. And as I always say, in an information war, there are no civilians. And which brings me to the case that happened in Vienna recently. Our intelligence service was able to expose a cell, an espionage cell. Of course, they were spying. I will start with that because it happened before. They were spying on Christo Grozev. This is how this group, basically this network started. You all know the case. He felt threatened for his life. And I mean, in Vienna, it happened all the times that people just randomly ask you, do you know Christo Grozev? Do you know where he is? Yeah? And it was very shady structure because you didn't know, is this person just interested in his work or is it connected to the Russian spying activity? Yeah? And there was one woman called Anna Thalhammer. She is one of the good guys in this war, and I also met her personally and talked a lot about her investigations. She's an investigative journalist for the Austrian newspaper Profil, which is very famous, also taking a look in all these China and Russia connections, and also where businesses are involved and lobby groups and agents of influence. I mean, they don't call it agents of influence, but at least they speak about such people and expose them a little bit. So they are one of the more brave magazines that we have in Austria, because usually we have a problem that we are afraid to name and shame the amplifiers of Russian narratives, for instance. Which brings me finally to what actually happened, that we know about this spy ring, not only because they are spying, but because they are planting disinformation online, which is not as exciting as the other thing, because they are spraying on Austrian walls close to magazines, close to newspapers, close where journalists work, spraying allegedly pro-Ukrainian messages with a far-right symbolism, which is, of course, in Austria and Germany a big deal, makes everybody nervous because of our history, to harm Ukraine, to portray Ukraine or the people who support Ukraine in a far-right way, and to harm and to sabotage the support for Ukraine. And I want to go back to the Cold War for 10 seconds. The Soviet Union back then in the days, they did the same. After the end of World War II, they sprayed swastikas on the walls in Germany to portray Germany as a still Nazi country, to sabotage the process of the good relationships that were built back then between Germany and France, and the start of the European Union. Everything that we have now in Europe goes back to these days of a new friendship, where former enemies become friends, and the Soviets tried to sabotage it, and now the Moscovites or the Russians try to sabotage the support for Ukraine.
And I just want to go over some things that I've noticed about Austria that may sound familiar to some of our viewers. So one of the things I've been looking at is Jan Marsalek, who ran Wirecard, right? And he was an Austrian executive. And we know that Jan Marsalek was targeting the Austrian intelligence services to insert their own people with the help of the far-right Freedom Party, the FPO, in Austria. We know that these Bulgarians who were convicted in the UK of working for Marsalik to do Russian spy operations. And we know that this Russian campaign was designed to influence the outcomes of elections in Austria. Does this sound like a Russian playbook? Like
Yeah,
they're
I think
executing these same things?
I think what I find interesting is that they use the same people. They are like hubs. It's like if you have a friend, let's say in Paris, it's a good old friend, and you can convince him to help you with this or that, then you give your friends other duties. And what they did with these spies, they gave them also disinformation operations, because they said maybe it's safer to do it, and you can also spray something when you are there, because it's about physical existence. It's about just being there. It's an asset. You are an asset already when they have a certain kind of trust. What many people don't know is, and I saw a report that these spies in the spy network, they are pro-Russian people. They are not just doing it for the money. They are kind of ideological wise supportive of Putin. They like Putin, and in Bulgaria there is a huge pro-Russian sentiment. I was there twice, and I have also colleagues there. It's a very difficult situation. You have pro-Ukrainian people and people very critical towards Moscow because of the history, and you have also pro-Russian people because of the history. Yeah, so I'm not. This is not contradicting itself. And what these cells do, what I'm in particular curious about, did they also paid agents of influence? Were they also a financial hub for instance, some professors? Yeah, I don't mention names. We're not mentioning names, but I have a lot of, let's say, concerns that we have not only in Austria, also in Germany or in the European Union. We have a lot of individuals who act like they are paid to spread Russian propaganda. What you need to know is that it's not only about this propaganda. It's not only about speaking with the public or being on television or it's also about being in academic circles or influencing politicians or being in some academic consulting advisory board of some government. And are these spies also responsible to pay when they pay by dollar bills and by handbags or envelopes, or is it all about crypto? We know that in some cases it's still cash. We know this from Slovakia, where the embassy does it, but it's of course much more convenient when you use these proxy spies, or we call them wegwerfagent, so throwaway agents. I think it's correct translations. I don't know what is the term you use in English, but you can help me out with that.
This sounds extremely familiar, unfortunately. And I think what we've seen we saw in the last election, and now we're seeing unfold in America, is effectively, what's in store for Europe if Europe doesn't, at least in my view, protect itself. I wanted to get a sense from you. I'm always very curious from people who are actually on the ground. What is the attitude there? Do people understand that the United States is now allied with Russia? That we are the axis now, right? And that there has been a seismic shift in American direction, polarity, as it were, that really puts Europe at an existential risk. And I'm just not sure it has kind of really sunk in what it means to have the United States, who has been partnered with NATO in the most successful military alliance, in modern history, what it means for the United States to no longer be part of the international order established after World War II.
I think Europe is starting to realize what that means, because we are increasing our funding for security, for defense, but there is also a resistance against this. And do you know where the resistance comes from? It comes from the peace movement from the 80s. And I'm not talking about time travelers. I'm talking about people who are now a little bit older. They were very young, and they were influenced by these Soviet campaigns. And we had this peace movement in Germany, also other countries, and in Austria. And the same people who were rallying against the Pershing II rockets back then are now rallying against weapons support for Ukraine, and exactly what you mentioned, the reaction on the NATO instability, so against more European defense, and they are calling Europe now the warmonger. And what I find in particular maybe interesting for you, we have a far left of peace activists who think that Trump is going to make peace, and they say, I don't like Trump, but, after the lie comes always before the but. And then they say, yeah, but he brings peace, he's something doing, and European Union, von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas, they are warmongers, and Zelensky is a warmonger. And I think, can you imagine the far left in my country? When I was a child, the people said, if you are wearing a suit, you are already a right winger. But the same people are saying now, why Zelensky did not wear a suit? I also don't understand. So they are demonizing him, and they use everything, even Trump. And of course, I cannot leave it out. We have a huge far-right movement in Austria, in Germany, and in almost all European countries. They are also pro-Russian, and they support the policy of the Trump government. And what should I say? It's the narratives and the people who are involved, like Tulsi Gabbard, for instance, or Robert F. Kennedy. Also, what Musk is doing. I mean, it's when you witness it, we know what is going on. Yeah, so most of us realize it. And what I can, to give you some hope, I remember 5, 6, 7 weeks ago, people were still, but maybe he's playing 4D chess, maybe it's going to be fine. They stopped, most of them stopped, and only the hardcore fans or personal acquaintances are still excusing everything or distorting it, because it's very clear. The good thing, and also something to give you hope, when things are clear, we can react. I'm more worried about kind of experts who are objective. For instance, Jeffrey Sachs. When Jeffrey Sachs speaks in the EU Parliament, it worries me more than a speech of Trump, because Trump, to be honest, they don't take him that serious anymore.
Yeah, Jeffrey Sachs is one of those. He's a much more sophisticated propagandist, but just as dangerous. I couldn't agree with you more. Hi-Fi, did you have a follow-up?
Well, I was just. Do people in Austria, is anyone talking about the fact that this kind of playbook we discussed, where there's this billionaire financing pro-Russian operations, pro-Russian. I mean, we know Sebastian Kurz is now working for Peter Thiel. We know that what's his name, Kilk, the fellow who was caught in Ibiza attempting to sell Russian influence. So we have corrupt politicians, we have influence agents being paid by billionaires. All these billionaires have ties back to Russia, and this is just Austria. Now, if we look at Moldova, you've got that Ilhan Shor person who got busted for running Russian operations. He was tied to Abramovich in the UK. Some of these Bulgarian nationals who were busted for spying have been tied to Abramovich. In Lithuania, you have the billionaires Aleksin, Zaitsev, Zamilis, Arkady Abramovich's kid in Lithuania. In Georgia, you've got Ivanishvili, who's been tied to Russia. In Romania, you've got that Georgescu who got millions in funding for TikTok ads out of nowhere, TikTok promotion. You've got a private military guy named Potra in Slovakia. You've got Shrenko and you've got Babis, who are two billionaires. So you've got all these billionaires who are pushing far right politics and Russian influence operations.
And
Everywhere.
not only here, not in all countries. Not
Yeah. Why do you think people don't see it in the UK or they don't see it in America? I mean, Musk is attempting to buy the Wisconsin Supreme Court right now, right? He's literally bribing people with $1 million checks. This is a global war. Why are people not calling it war? What's stopping it in Austria? Is it just the pushback from the right?
now we have. I still try to remember the spy you told me because it's very important. The name I can't remember. I tried to look
Marsalek?
it up. Egisto Ott, very significant name. Yeah.
Ott, the former. Okay, yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So and now I'm here because this is what we, the case that we have is we have two. In Austria, spying against the government is illegal, but spying in general is not illegal. This is one problem, the judiciary. And then we have another problem that we don't, in all Western countries, we don't consider agents of influence spies at all. We just consider them people, and the way they are recruited and they are buying. If you don't take information out and give it to a kind of a regime, then there is nothing, nobody cares about it, except that maybe if it is reported by investigative journalism usually, then these people are not invited to TV. They are kind of lame ducks then. We had it with one case, Hubert Seipel, who received 600,000 US dollar euros by a Putin-linked oligarch. He was not invited back then. But we are cowards. We are cowards. We are just not brave enough to report them and to investigate them. And this is also this is why I'm proud about the recent developments in the recent case. And this is why we are here, that something good is coming out of Austria. But it's not only Moldova and Austria, Slovakia and Hungary. We have the situation in Germany. They are equally naive. We have in France, we have a situation where people, when I go to a conference, a guy tells me he got sued by RT. They have the guts to sue people by RT just because of his reporting. Then I know a journalist in Germany who got sued or received a lawyer's letter by official Russian institutions. I don't want to say more because then I will receive a letter too. So what they do, everybody, these Russian networks and networks of oligarchs, they use their lawyers. They have very, very powerful lawyers, and it works almost, I don't know how the situation is in the US. To be honest, it sounds very radical, but we're in the radicalized podcast and I'm radicalized. So I give you one sentence. In Europe, we don't have freedom of speech regarding criticizing Russian propaganda. We have freedom of speech if you want to spread Russian propaganda, but if you criticize these actors, freedom of speech is gone. And that's terrible because they sue you, they give you letters, and we need to get more brave.
Can I just back you up there? We have that here too. I was personally sued for criticizing Russian propaganda from Mike Flynn and Kash Patel, who is now the FBI director. I was literally sued by both of them for reporting accurately in my own special way, but my accurate take on their behavior. And it's exactly the same thing. These are people who are literally pushing, QAnon and the worst conspiracy theories, in the world. and then sue somebody for reporting on that fact. It's exactly the same thing here. And you know, again, my only message for our friends in Europe is all of these things, the cowardice in terms of the influence turning, you know, pro-Russian all of a sudden and nobody really talking about it. That's how it happens. And, you know, my concern is that, you know, if Europe doesn't manage to come together and hold firm, you know, the disease that sort of took us is going to take Europe. So, you know, my my hope is that that doesn't happen.
Dietmar, being in Europe at this moment, I just feel like I get a sense that people are really waking up to some degree based on the chaos in America. And there seems to be, at least from the people that I'm interacting with, a consensus that they sure don't want what we have. But do you think that Marine Le Pen being sentenced to 4 years is any kind of sign that things may go in a better direction? Do you think even looking at Canada, when you see that they are taking, you know, active moves away from the, you know, dollar and putting it toward the EU, do you get a sense that there is some mobilization?
Yeah, I will try to answer it a little bit differently than before. I think that there are signs that we are waking up, maybe too slow. And I like what is happening, for instance, Canada, Europe, that we talk more now, because it was not always that easy, especially from the European side, which brings me to something I wanted to add anyway. The problem is we have this attack from the far right. And there are many. Yeah? We have the situation in the US, we have the situation in many European countries, including Austria, Germany. But it's not that we who are pro-European, yeah, it's funny to talk with Americans about pro-European, but you know, this transatlantic partnership, pro-democracy, pro-liberal democracy. It's not that we are united, unfortunately. I mean, we are united, but it's not that everybody who is against the far right is also part of our group. And I told it before that when I had another discussion in Vienna, and some people were shocked, there are so many left-wing peace activists who are praising Trump for his activities with Putin, and also other ones. And they are also, I saw left-wing, this party from the European Parliament who are against what is happening with Le Pen, supporting Le Pen, basically. Yeah? And this is what worries me, because we are not a bloc against the far right and oligarch structures. We are not united because some of them, the horseshoe participants, or they refuse to side with us. They side with the others because they want to destroy everything. They don't like democracy. They don't like, and they are all united. You know what unites them? They hate against the Biden administration. They still want to fight the Biden administration, even if it doesn't exist anymore. It's history, but they are so full of revenge, and this is why the current administration in the US doesn't support Ukraine, because they are still fighting against Joe Biden.
Yeah, that is incredible. I know I just wrote about, and Jim's been doing a lot of work around this. I just wrote about how Europe should strike now. Well, Russia is still weak before Putin gets infused with American dollars, and just mobilize every single effort and body they have behind Ukraine and destroying the Putin regime, because I think there's a very small window to do it. But again, it requires people being on the same page, and I don't think that we're quite there yet. Anything that you can leave us with from Europe that you feel is a very hopeful sign, as opposed to all the things that were discussed here today?
Yeah, we are going to invest more in our security. We are going to talk more about security, where I see that more people ask me about disinformation, foreign interference campaigns. There are people who are waking up, who say, and who are also motivated to warn others what we are facing. I think we should talk more to the Americans, because the US is not only the government. We should talk more to people like you. I think this is what we can do more. We cannot forget our relationship. But of course, it is very difficult on the government level. Maybe there are opportunities on the local level that we can communicate more, for instance, with governors and so on. But I'm quite optimistic in the sense that we are not completely asleep, but it's not enough, of course, because this is something quite tough, I have to say, because it sounds maybe a little bit right-wing, but I don't mean it in that way. We in Western societies, during the decades, we developed a kind of self-hate. And the self-hate comes from the left, and it also comes from the far right. The far right hates us because we are so liberal and we are so woke, or whatever they call it. And the far left hates us because they think we are not communist, we are capitalist, and all the bad things. Yeah? So we are not resilient in our democracy. We don't understand what we have to defend. Our democracies are already old. The US democracy is very old, so people are used to it. They think it's forever, it's eternal. And even in Austria, we have only 80 years of democracy before we had the worst dictatorship in the world. People still don't understand what they are fighting for. They think, yeah, it will be always like that. We are neutral. We can close ears and eyes and everything is going to be fine. That worries me a lot. We need to defend ourselves. We can be self-critical. Yeah, this is absolutely okay. Also about history, I think we have a lot. Yeah, but we cannot be so self-critical that we destroy our democratic civilization.
High five.
Dietmar, I just have one final question. And it seems to me the answer is obvious, but maybe you disagree. It seems to me that the only way to make this end is to crush Putin, to dismantle Russia as a nation state, and remove the Russian threat from the globe. Agree? Disagree?
It's hard to disagree. Yeah. So the problem is that Russia has allies. And there are a couple of other authoritarian regimes. Not all of them are. Maybe the relationship between the Trump administration and these countries is not clear, but they are a problem anyway, like China and Iran and so on. But if we do not manage the threat from Russia, they are trying to destroy us. They are trying to destroy, or at least subvert, infiltrate, and destabilize our democracies. If we do not manage that, then our civilization is going to be gone maybe in only 5 years. So yeah, I cannot disagree with what you said. They need to pay what they have done. And it cannot be a solution that Russia is getting bigger with this war, that they somehow benefit from it, that it's rewarding to lead a war of aggression. If they become only 1 square mile bigger Russia in 2025, officially recognized by the international community, would be a destabilization of the world order.
Thank you so much, Dietmar Pichler. And please, on behalf of RadPod, please thank the Austrian intelligence agencies for their role in helping to expose this Russian subterfuge and aggression over and over again. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you. It's an honor. Thanks for having me.